Hello, hello, hello! My name is Artemis_Anime, and today I am reading A Robin's Nest by SilvermistAnimeLover. Chapter 6, The USJ. Summary. We've finally reached the USJ chapter. Woo! I'm technically posting this on Tuesday night instead of the normal Wednesday, because I babysit all day Wednesday, and I'm not sure if I'll have the time or opportunity to post it tomorrow. So please enjoy this chapter, and remember to leave a comment and a kudos if you like it. Also, to clarify, this version of Robin is based off of the Young Justice version, that's the version I'm most familiar with. Well, that one and the Batman's 2004 version. I also know a lot of you were vying for Shota to punch All Might after the battle class, and I plan to put that as an omic somewhere, because you all keep asking for it, smiley face. Rest assured, I'll have him punch All Might at some point. Okay? Trigger warnings. Blood, violence, and swearing. Chapter 6. USJ. Izuku would have been awed at the interior of the building if he hadn't been so jumpy with adrenaline. He hyperanalyzed everything, hand hovering over his staff, ready to snatch and extend at a moment's notice. Whatever was going to happen had him on edge, more than stealing Alfred's cookies. 13. Where is All Might? He was supposed to meet us here, Aizawa asked, looking around. About that. 13 held up 3 fingers. Izuku knew what that meant. He ran out of hero time. What an irresponsible... He tried to quell the sickening feeling welling up in his body. He tried to listen and pay attention to 13's inspiring speech. He really did. But before he knew it, his classmates were clapping, and 13 was bowing, and that feeling got worse. Alright, first but Aizawa didn't finish his sentence. The lights flickered, and the water in the fountain down in the square spluttered. A black warp opened in the air, and Aizawa stiffened and turned around in horror. Izuku fell into a battle stance in front of the class, staff out and extended as he followed Aizawa's horrified gaze. A hand reached through the swirling purple portal, and a blue-haired man with a hand covering his face peered out. Izuku caught sight of his single visible red eye and shivered. That look. He knew that look. This man was the same kind of crazy that he saw back in Gotham. This was bad. Gather together. Don't move, Aizawa ordered, loosening his scarf. 13. Protect the students. Ichiro looked around and noticed the portal. What's that? Villains started pouring out of the warp gate. Bad got worse. Is this like the entrance exam where the lessons already started? He made a move forward, but Izuku held a hand out to stop him. Don't move, Aizawa snapped out at them as he put his goggles on. Those are villains. The class froze. The sudden reality of the situation hit them hard. Midoriya. Aizawa looked at Izuku. He seemed to hesitate for a moment before he spoke with a fierce undertone. Protect the students. Be careful, he stressed. The students didn't understand why Izuku was suddenly placed as the same position as 13. They don't know that Izuku had experience fighting villains, but they also didn't get the chance to answer as Izuku nodded, a hard gleam in his eyes. He saw 13 shoot him a somewhat odd look, or at least he assumed it was odd. It was hard to tell with their helmet. Come back alive, Aizawa, Izuku ordered as Aizawa jumped into the fray. 13 started to herd the students out. I'll guard the rear, Izuku informed 13 as he made sure the stragglers were safe. What's going on, man? Kaminari asked Izuku, bewildered. I mean, I know you're the class rep, but... No time to explain. I'll tell you later, Izuku promised. We need to make it out alive first. But then, that warp villain blocked their path. For a moment, Izuku feared that Aizawa had been killed. He shook his head. There's no time for such things. The sound of the fight in the background assured him that Aizawa was most definitely alive. Things were happening almost too fast for him to react. Almost. When that man, Kurogiri, surrounded them with his mists, Izuku snatched the 2 students that were closest to him, Atsushi and Iricho. He would protect anyone he could. Then they were falling. He saw the water below them, And while he knew Atsuhi would be fine, he doubted Erikiro would fare as well. He noticed an actress person who Atsuhi had wrapped her tongue around, Mineta. "Hang on," he ordered them, and felt their arms tighten around them. He snagged his grappling hook and roughly deposited them on the boat. Shipwreck zone, he realized. He was on his feet in an instant, surveying the deck for enemies. He realized that they must not know their quirks or skills if they dropped Atsui here in the shipwreck zone, which meant, yep, the villains were staying in the water. They may have been cannon fodder, but they weren't that stupid. They were waiting it out, trying to figure out what of their combat skills were before engaging them in combat. He had to think fast to get them out of this situation unharmed. And damned if he wasn't going to protect these kids, because they were his responsibility, and he may technically be a kid himself, but he'd lived like 7 years before being forced back into his 9-year-old body. So he was really in his early 20s or something. So yeah, kids. Atsui. Call me Sue. Sue, I need you to tell me about your quirk. You too, Mineta, Ichiro. The three talked, and Izuku was slowly forming a plan. Okay, I think I know what we can do. He explained his plan before he ran into the boat's interior. Perfect. He found an area to hack from. He traced the signal from the boat to the control board and remotely hacked it, activating the whirlpool in the water. Now, Mineta, he shouted, and the boy started throwing his sticky balls into the water like no tomorrow. Sure enough, their enemies got caught, and by the time Izuku deactivated the whirlpool, they were either all unconscious or stuck together like one giant villain raft. That was a good plan, Midori. Izuku. If I can call you Sue, you can call me Izuku. Okay, get you. Damn, man, that was awesome, Ichiro grinned. The four of them got to shore and started making their way carefully through the square, trying to avoid getting caught up in Aizawa's skirmish. But the movement in the fire started to draw their attention. They couldn't help but look. And then they were transfixed in horror when the blue-haired man, Shigaraki, disintegrated Aizawa's elbow. Move, now, Izuku whispered urgently to the others three. Help whoever's at the entrance. What about you, Izuku? Get you? Sue asked in concern. Yeah, we're not about to leave you, Ichiro refuted. You can't possibly be thinking about fighting that. He's a pro and he's getting hurt, Mineta freaked. Quiet, he snapped. Unless you want to draw their attention, just do as I say. He didn't bother trying to reassure them that he'd be okay. Lies like that tended to jinx whatever luck someone had. And then the nomu snatched Aizawa into the ground. The creature moved faster than Bane and seemed 3 times as strong. He shivered as the blood flew through the air. Izuku stilled himself, forced himself to stay where he was. If he rushed out now, he would just put his classmates in danger. But Kurogiri came back and informed Shigaraki that 13 had been taken care of, and someone escaped and was running to get help. Ah, it's game over, he muttered to himself in disappointment. He's just a child. He's a man-child with about as much sanity as the Joker. Terrifying. Though now that he was really looking at Shigaraki, he realized that the blue-haired man still had much more sanity and self-preservation than the Joker. I suppose that, even in the future, nobody can measure up to the Joker's unique brand of insanity. Somehow, this thought comforted him. Shigaraki wasn't anywhere near Joker's level. Still a threat, yes, especially to these untrained kids. But suddenly, Shigaraki wasn't so intimidating to Izuku anymore. Still just as dangerous, though. Before we go, let's crush the symbol of peace's pride. Shigaraki grinned as he moved, almost too fast for Izuku to see. Almost. Between being best friends with Kid Flash gave one unreal reflexes after all. And never had Izuku been more grateful for his longtime friend. Moving just as fast as Shigaraki, he shoved himself in front of Sue, blocking the blow with his left arm. Izuku! Sue's eyes were wide in horror as she processed what's happened. He bit down a cry as the pain hit him before it was abruptly cut off. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Aizawa using the last of his power. How was he even still conscious? To erase Shigaraki's quirk. He didn't waste a single precious second that his sensei had bought him, and punched the blue-haired man in the face, smirking as he felt his nose crack. He leapt out of the water as Shigaraki stumbled back, barely dodging Izuku's kick. "Nomu!" he cried out, and the creature abandoned his still-awake prey and dashed for Izuku. Again, he thanked his time spent running around with the two fastest men to ever walk the earth. Without them, he never would have been able to dodge Nomu's hit. The villain stared at Izuku in shock, just at the edge of the massive crater Nomu had created. "Who are you?" Shigaraki asked, interest piqued. "No normal kid can dodge something as fast as Nomu." "I'm a hero," Izuku grinned, "and the biggest thorn you'll ever have in your side." "Nomu, catch that brat!" Shigaraki growled. "But don't kill him." "Ooh, I pissed him off," he grinned excitedly. He shot a brief look to Ikiro and Sue, before glancing at Aizawa. The kids looked on in horrified awe, and Eraserhead was supporting a very similar look, though his was laced with concerned anger, and his face was covered in far more blood than was healthy. Izuku knew he couldn't keep dodging for long. The Nomu was way too fast, but he managed, barely. He threw a birdarang at Shigaraki. It missed, landing at his feet. He laughed at Izuku's shitty aim, until it exploded. "Don't diss my toys, man. Not cool. I worked hard on those, you know." Izuku let loose his signature cackle as he used the brief confusion to strike Shigaraki again. He was pleased to see the broken nose from earlier work, and the new black eye he had just given him. He almost didn't dodge the Nomu's next attack, but blinding pain radiated from his neck as Shigaraki finally got a hit in. Luckily, it was brief enough that it wasn't fatal, but still, too close! So he can control how quickly something disintegrates. All 5 fingers are needed in his quirk to activate. This went on for several minutes, Izuku dodging both the Nomu and Shigaraki, though Shigaraki had caught his shoulder once, disregarding it nearly to the bone. Didn't that hurt like a son of a bitch? Nomu had finally caught him by his bad arm, the one that he'd used to all but sacrifice for Sue, and held him in the air. He bit down a scream when Nomu snapped his arm back like a twig, and glared at Shigaraki as the man smiled back. "You're an interesting one. You're not an NPC like all those others. You're a higher level than those other brats. A mini-boss? Or a boss later in the game?" He grinned madly, and Izuku smirked back. "Wouldn't you like to know? If I can keep him talking, then his attention is on me. And if it's on me, then it isn't on Tsu, Eiichiro, Mineta, Aizawa." He hoped they'd manage to grab Aizawa and get out of there, but Izuku knew better than to look. He couldn't risk drawing Shigaraki's attention to anywhere but himself. "At least tell me your quirk before I kill you. Sensei may want it." That statement sent a small shiver down his spine, and he filed that statement away for later evaluation. "My quirk?" Izuku couldn't help it. He laughed, bloodied and mangled, facing down an insane villain who thought he was about to kill him. This brought back memories, for sure. But the idea that this villain thought he was going to kill him was laughable. Robin had been in so many hopeless situations, and this was far from hopeless. There were people nearby who could move and fight. Nobody was dead, yet, his mind supplied, and his backup was on the way, assuming that Yamada took his message seriously. More than that, he laughed because this guy hadn't realized that Izuku was quirkless. He was looking forward to seeing this man's reaction. "Hate to tell you this, Shigaraki, was it? But I'm quirkless. 2 pinky-toe joints." He wiggled his foot to prove his point. "You're being bested by a brat who doesn't even have a special power." Shigaraki's face morphed into an expression of loathing as his eye gleamed with malice and hatred. And was that a little hint of respect? Though it was meant to be intimidating, it was entertaining to Izuku, because all his encounters with the Joker and other Gotham regulars apparently did leave him a little unhinged himself. "How dare you mock me!" He reached out a hand towards Izuku's chest. "I was going to make this fast, because you're actually really cool. But now you've pissed me off. You're going to suffer." Hate to tell you this, five-finger death punch wannabe, but I've been tortured by scarier dudes than you. They didn't even need quirks to get the job done. Izuku grinned as Shigaraki came closer. Maybe he thought that Izuku would be in too much pain to move. Maybe he thought the Nomu had a tighter hold. Maybe he was just too pissed to think about it. So when Shigaraki came closer, Izuku was able to deliver a nice hard kick between those legs with one steel-toed boot, and an equally harsh kick to his stomach with the other. The blue-haired man crumpled to the ground in pain, even as the Nomu screeched, throwing Izuku right into the fountain with deadly force. He saw stars, but had just enough time to make sure he hit that fountain in a very specific and practiced manner. Not for the first time, he was grateful for his experiences as Robin. If he hadn't been thrown through that brick wall more times than he could count, he probably wouldn't have survived being thrown into a stone fountain with a force rivaling Superman's strength. Though Izuku would argue that All Might, and by extension Nomu, was actually somehow stronger than Superman, but they'd never truly know. He barely managed to avoid a nasty concussion. Staggering to his feet, he noticed that Tsu, Ejiro, and Mineta had grabbed Aizawa, and the three were hiding near the staircase, watching the fight unfold in horror. Aizawa in particular looked like he had half a mind to come over and fight alongside Izuku, or kill him himself, though his two broken arms and extreme head trauma prevented that. Seriously, how is he awake? Even Bruce couldn't stay conscious after that kind of beating. Izuku would have sent them a reassuring look, but he couldn't risk drawing any attention to them. At that very moment, the doors of the USJ flew off their hinges as All Might came in. For the first time since the slime villain incident, Izuku was relieved to see the number one hero. "You took your sweet fucking time," he twitched in annoyance, ducking to the side, having seen the movement out of his peripheral vision, only to relax upon seeing that it was just Shigaraki finally getting up. "Looks like we gotta continue." Maybe Izuku had hit his head a little, because though he could follow All Might's impressive speed, which he was noted was still smaller than Nomu, he wasn't able to dodge the man's hand that grabbed him, and safely deposited him with his classmates and severely injured sensei. Sue had tears in her eyes as she looked him over. "Holy shit, man, what the hell was that?" Ejiro looked him over with wide eyes. Aizawa glared at him as Izuku got out his first aid kit. "Stop glaring and be still." Izuku sent Aizawa a glare of his own as he, awkwardly yet expertly, wrapped the man's head stem to the breathing. He didn't want to mess with Aizawa's arms. They were far too shattered for him to deal with. Instead, he wrapped his elbow and carefully slid his arms into a makeshift sling to prevent them from worsening, before doing the same to his own shattered left arm. "You've done this before," Ejiro accused. "Of course I have." Izuku then threw his dislocated shoulder into the side of the staircase, relocating it with a sickening pop. Ow, I hate relocating shit. He quickly shook himself. There was nothing more he could do for his left arm. That needed a medical professional, and he couldn't feel any other major issues that couldn't be treated later. "Alright, field treatment's done," Izuku nodded to himself. "We need to get Aizawa out of here and regroup with everyone else." He looked up at the other 4 people he was with. "Problem child," Aizawa growled out through clenched teeth. "Save your strength, but try to stay awake. Head injuries are a bitch." Izuku shook his head. "Keep talking, but don't you dare try to move." "Thank you." He gave Izuku a meaningful look. "If you die, I'm going to bring you back and kill you myself," Izuku promised. "Same to you, brat." Nobody's dying, Ejiro denied as he carefully scooped Aizawa up into his arm. Eji, keep him talking. If he falls asleep with that head injury, he may never wake up, Izuku stated firmly. Right. He hesitated. You were so badass out there. He rambled for a minute. Nice try, kid. Aizawa slurred out. We'll work on your rescue form later in the year. Izuku snorted. You better hold on to us then, Eraserhead. All Might had been fighting the Nomu up to this point, was still pounding away at the creature that Shigaraki claimed held several different quirks. But then, Izuku felt it before he saw it. Shigaraki's hand flew through a portal created by Korigiri. Izuku's eyes locked with Shigaraki's, and he knew. In that moment, though Shigaraki's original goal had been to kill All Might, he found a more pressing goal, Izuku. In landing several hits and hurting Shigaraki's pride, Izuku had managed to paint himself as the villain's equal. Now it would seem that Shigaraki saw Izuku in the same manner the Joker once saw Batman, and Izuku couldn't say he was overly pleased by the sentiment. Izuku felt the 5 fingers brush his right cheek as pain blossomed. Shigaraki wasn't going for the kill shot. He could feel it. This was more than that. A warning, a mark. He wanted to brand Izuku as his rival, as his antagonist. And the pain right below his right cheekbone flared as Shigaraki's quirk ate away at his skin. At the same moment, he threw a knife, which Shigaraki had cut deep onto his left cheek, one that would surely scar. He was still locked in an intense staring contest with the man who grinned, and bang! The hand flashed as Shigaraki held his shoulder gingerly, blood blossoming like a flower on his shirt. Izuku let out a breath. The moment of intensity gone. The cavalry had arrived. President Mike saw them first, and when his eyes landed on Aizawa, his expression changed to beyond livid. Yeah! He all but screamed in the loudest voice Izuku had ever heard in his life. Luckily, it wasn't directed at him. Several villains who had just started coming to and had been gearing up to attack the injured group crumpled to the ground. You guys alive? President Mike asked, jumping down to assess the situation. It would have sounded casual to anyone else, but to Izuku, who had learned to listen to the slight influxes of tone and body language to understand the emotions of the Batman, President Mike's fear and concern were as loud as his quirk. I'm alive, Aizawa reassured. I'm still breathing. Izuku coughed up a small bit of blood, one hand tracing what he knew was going to be a new scar on his right cheek. He winced as the sweat and dirt on his right hand caused the open wound to sting even more fiercely. Cementos, we've got injured down here, President Mike called up. Hold tight, we'll take care of this. He smiled. You're safe now. The other kids relaxed, but Izuku kept his form rigid and tense, ready to fight at the drop of the hat if need be. There was no logical reaction when your enemy had access to a literal wormhole. Careful. Blue-haired Shigaraki has a disintegration quirk. All 5 fingers needed to touch a target, and he can control the speed and rate of disintegration. It's stronger when he's pissed, Izuku informed. The guy covered in shadows has a warp quirk. Right. Thanks, little listener. He smiled before running off to join the fray. Cementos made his way towards them, along with Midnight. As the 2 teachers reached towards them, Izuku felt an odd compulsion to turn around and look at the square they'd left behind. He locked eyes with Shigaraki again. The man grinned, a sick, twisted smile spinning out of his face. I'll look forward to our rematch. His voice was quiet, but it echoed in the building eerily. Izuku vaguely noted that the entire area had gone quiet, as Shigaraki had gone 1 foot in the portal of his escape. As he spoke, Izuku, he could feel the teacher stiffen and look at him with a dawning horror. I acknowledge you as my nemesis. I will kill you. Izuku felt Aizawa shift, and Midnight and Cementos stand a little closer to him, as if to protect or shield him from his newfound enemy. But Izuku met Shigaraki's gaze steadily, a burning fire in his eyes. You can try, Shigaraki. His own voice echoed as he tried to fight the urge to cough up more blood. Instead, He gave him a wicked smile through bloodied teeth, conveying strength born from countless hardships. He ignored the pain in his body as he shifted to a deceivingly relaxed, confident posture, one he'd constantly used as Robin. He was silently telling Shigaraki that he wasn't worried about his declaration. But you're going to have a very hard time achieving that goal. I refuse to die by your hand. Then it appears we're at an impasse. It seems I've found a bonus level. Shigaraki laughed, a new gleam of excitement in his eyes as he and Karagiri made their escape. Everyone was still for a moment. The cannon fodder villains had been rounded up and nobody knew what to say after that. We should find the remaining students, Nezu said, snapping everyone out of their stupor. Midnight carefully took Aizawa from Ejiro's arm. Cementos approached Izuku and carefully picked him up too. I'm not sure if that speech of yours was powerful or stupid, but either way, you're badly hurt. You shouldn't be walking, Cementos reminded him. I suppose that's fair. He coughed up more blood. Oh, I think I might have pissed him off a bit much. You think? Ejiro scoffed. Do you think it was the kick in the nuts? Izuku wondered aloud. Did you really kick a villain in the sack? Midnight stared, lips twitching. He did. Aizawa smirked. Good. You aren't dead yet, Midnight smirked. Try to stay awake without your devil strength. It's effective, Aizawa argued. Be that as it may, it's a heart attack in a cup. She shook her head as they walked across the platform. Izuku winced as a rather violent fit of coughing blood had blood spilling from his mouth like, oh my god, I hate internal bleeding. This sucks. Cementos sent him a look of disbelief. You... He shook his head as he followed Midnight outside. Can't believe that this sucks is his reaction. Cementos grumbled under his breath. Midoriya! Ida's eyes widened in fear when he saw the teacher carrying out his friend, who was covered in blood. The bone out of his shoulder was showing, and his left arm was held in a hastily made sling. I'll be fine, Ida. Izuku waved him off with his good arm. I've had worse. Is everyone else okay? Yeah, everyone's fine, Kaminari piped in, worry etched in his face. It looks worse than it is, Izuku reassured them. Why do I not believe you? Kaminari shuddered. Nobody else had the chance to protest as Izuku was loaded into the back of an ambulance and rushed off to the hospital. He abruptly felt bone-tired. His eyes sagged as the adrenaline finally started to filter out of his system. The pain started to register, and he realized that he was probably a little more hurt than he'd first anticipated. But he'd still had worse. He'd be fine. Though the ambulance was new to him, he missed the Batmobile. He finally let the day catch up with him as he finally succumbed to the darkness. Damn. So much for patrol tonight. And that was Chapter 6 of A Robin's Nest by SilvermistAnimeLover, the USJ, read to you by Artemis_anime. Thank you all for listening, and I am sorry if there were any imperfections in the language that I was using. It has been a pleasure reading for you guys, and I will see you all next week. Bye!